Okay, testing, 1, 2, testing. Testing, 1, 2, 3, testing, testing.
into my iPad, so I'd like to call this meeting of the Monroe County Plan Commission to order. And Ms. Nestor Jelen, will you please call the roll?
Sure. Tron Enright Randolph, Scott Ferris, Jeff Morris, Carol Munson. Here. Edward Ullman.
Here.
Dee Owens,
Here.
Jerry Pittsford,
Here.
Julie Thomas. Here. Margaret Clements.
Here.
Okay, so we have, and Chris Cockrum.
Here.
So we have 6 in-person, or 5 in-person members, 6 Plan Commission members attending in a quorum.
Not a point of order. I think we only have 5 Plan Commission members in person and 1 online.
And I would like to ask TSD if we don't have video on our monitor up here in front of us, and I don't know if that's something that can be addressed. Thank you.
Oh, but I was enjoying the pretty screens there.
Is there a motion to introduce the evidence? Second? Second. Okay.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to introduce the following items into the evidence. The Monroe County zoning ordinance as adopted and amended. The Monroe County comprehensive plan as adopted and amended. The Monroe County subdivision control ordinance as adopted and amended. The Monroe County Plan Commission rules of procedure as adopted and amended. And the cases that were legally advertised and the schedule for hearing on tonight's agenda.
Is there a motion to approve?
Motion.
Okay, I'll go ahead and call the roll. A vote in favor is a vote to approve the evidence. Cheryl Munson,
Yes.
Edward Ullman,
Yes.
Dee Owens,
Yes.
Jerry Pittsford,
Yes.
Julie Thomas,
Yes.
Margaret Clements.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0.
Is there a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
Motion.
Second? Okay.
Okay, a vote in favor is a vote to approve the agenda as presented. Edward Ullman,
Yes.
Dee Owens,
Yes.
Jerry Pittsford,
Yes.
Julie Thomas,
Yes.
Margaret Clements,
Yes.
Cheryl Munson.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0.
Okay, there are 3 sets of minutes tonight, and if someone would like to make a motion to either approve them collectively or individually, we'd like to hear that motion.
I'll make a motion to approve all 3 sets of minutes presented in the packet.
Second.
Okay, great.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes for January 16th, February 20th, and March 19th, 2024 Plan Commission meeting minutes. A vote yes is a vote to approve all 3 meeting minutes. Dee Owens,
Yes.
Jerry Pittsford,
Yes.
Julie Thomas,
Yes.
Margaret Clements,
Yes?
Cheryl Munson,
Yes.
Edward Ullman.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0.
And as a courtesy to the people who are attending, item number 2 on the agenda, the trails at Robertson Farm PUD outline, has been continued by staff. So that item will not be heard tonight. Just if you're here in the room or online, we will not be discussing that tonight. So there's no administrative business to discover, and we move now to the first item under unfinished business, which is PUO-23-6 North Park 2 PUD Outline Plan Amendment 1. And this is the final hearing concerning 198.6 plus or minus acre parcel in Bloomington Township, Section 30 at North Packing House Road. And Ms. Crecelius, if you'd please review that case with us, we'd be grateful.
Yes, absolutely. So this is the final hearing for this outline plan amendment to a PUD. I'm just prepared a few updates. I do have the full slide deck if anybody has any, needs any refresher points. So we are currently looking at a property off of North Packing House Road, 98.6 acres. The property is zoned North Park 2 PUD, a separate PUD than North Park PUD. So the update since this was heard at the preliminary hearing on February 20th, The petitioner has provided a written commitment that has been reviewed by the legal department. They have hit the majority of all points that the Planning Commission rose at the preliminary hearing. The petition request now limits the proposed use of mass fill to, well, mass fill and grading to only 27.5 acres of the property. Before the written commitment, the request included to add the proposed use to the entirety of the site. Should the petitioner seek to utilize the remaining 71 acres, they would need to return for a new outline plan amendment to add that as a permitted use to the remaining portion of the property. So just a little reminder, so this is the proposed fill area that they had included as a draft development plan under their petition. So if this petition is approved, the next step would be a development plan filing for the 27.5 acres, which will require highway and stormwater review. The petitioner has provided an area of protection for historic purposes, and that can be found on page 7 of Exhibit 9. They have proposed a historic preservation area that was reviewed by the Board of Historic Preservation yesterday at the May 20th meeting, and I have comments on that in just a moment. So to go over the written commitment a little bit, they have provided the draft development plan as point number 1. Owner shall perform fill activities according to the fill plan shown in Exhibit A. Point number 2 is the owner will not fill or develop the formerly quarried areas outlined on the attached Exhibit B. And on your screen is a quick screenshot of Exhibit B. The underlying map is a illustration from the I-69 Historic Preservation Landscape area that was done. So it showed some of the structures in the quarry holes. So what they've overlaid on top is the green area, which they're proposing as a historic preservation area. Towards the bottom, you'll see a red note and an arrow. So part of the original portion of Long Hole is not necessarily included in this historic preservation area, and they include a note that says that the current North Park 2 PUD plans show a possible roadway / stream crossing in this area. So a portion of that Long Hole quarry is not included. So they state that the site is anticipated to be prepared and utilized for industrial fill. I'm going to jump back a couple. Number 3 includes some of the environmental concerns about, possible water or soil contamination. So in number 3, they go over 2 different kind of requirements, which is the owner shall sample water flowing from the site quarterly, and that the owner will randomly test clean fill for contaminants. Number 5 of their condition is they've included the karst report provided by Hydrogeology Inc., which we have seen before as an exhibit. They've included that as Exhibit D, and they state that all filling activities on the site would be conducted with respect to the karst features. Number 6 discusses regulated wetland streams or other environmental features shown in Exhibit E. Again, that would be the environmental report. It says, environmental feature areas to be disturbed, but not limited to future disturbance of other features will require further approval with this fill plan. So then they outline a few areas that would be allowed. Number 7 states that temporary stockpiles will not exceed 20 feet in total height. Most of those were items that were brought up at the preliminary hearing. So this was discussed yesterday evening at the Board of Historic Preservation. They did forward they did make a motion and forward a request for a condition. Upon review, planning staff recommends the following condition, which is that the petitioner attend a Board of Historic Preservation meeting to discuss areas that could be locally designated, and that on the future development plan, petitioner shall name quarry holes protected under Exhibit B as historically named in the I-69 report. The Board of Historic Review did include a letter that was included in this last packet where they do discuss some of their concerns. But their motion on screen is more up to date as of yesterday evening. So staff recommends forwarding the petition with a positive recommendation to the county commissioners subject to the highway department and stormwater reports with the following conditions. That number one, the written commitment is updated to include the revisions requested by county legal as shown in Exhibit 10. That B, a list of soil contaminants that will be tested for. And C, include the real estate description for their adjacent parcel 5305-30-407-000-004, which is not within the petition site, but is proposed as being protected under their written commitment. And then number two, that the petitioner attend a Board of Historic Preservation meeting to discuss areas that could be locally designated, and that on the development plan, the petitioner shall name the quarry holes protected under Exhibit B as historically named in the I-69 report. Does anybody have any questions?
Okay, do members of the Plan Commission have, yes, Commissioner Thomas?
I relied on the May 13th letter from the Historic Preservation Board of Review that was in the packet. What is the newest recommendation from them, and is there somebody here from that board that can speak to this?
We do have Devin from the board is here. And we also, I just put on screen, the middle section is their forwarded motion.
Mr. Devon, yes, we'd like to have you come to the microphone, and if you'd be so kind as to sign in, and we'd like to hear what the differences are before we hear from the petitioner.
Sorry, I've got a long last name. Okay. Would you be able to go back to the image that shows the fill site with the grading? Okay, yes. My name is Devin Blankenship, and I'm a member of the Historic Preservation Board. We are pretty content with what our original letter says and don't really have any amendments to that original letter. So we did put in the condition that we would like for the developer to put in an application for historic preservation since they've designated on the map. And we want to make sure that we recognize the historic names of those quarries and other sites. When I first looked at this image here, I did not realize that the area that appears dark gray or black was grading. And so it's very, very, very steep. And so we spent a long time last night discussing the visual impact of that, especially when it's across from a county property that we're hoping to have developed into Limestone Heritage Park. So without seeing an image of an elevation of what that looks like, that was one of our concerns, not knowing what the surface would be covered with, riprap, grass, trees. I've traveled a lot, and that's where you'd build a fortress, is on top of grades like that. So I'm not sure how it's going to look, from the ground looking up at it. The other thing that was an item of concern for us is the fill up to 50 feet deep. In that area for overburden for limestone, we would typically have 15 to 20 feet of overburden. And since that's still some of the world's finest dimensional limestone under there, we didn't necessarily think that it was fitting for a landscape district to have more land piled on top of it than what originally would have been there. So so that was another concern of ours as well, too, the depth of 50 feet. We do have limestone experts in the area who say that still some of the best limestone is right there in the neighborhood. And right under the 45-46 bypass is some of our best limestone still. And so we're not saying somebody's going to get it out tomorrow, but it's possible that 100 to 200 years from now, somebody will come back with an easier, better way to extract it than what we might have today and look for ways to get the limestone out. So those were just considerations we wanted to throw out there. as the Historic Preservation Board as we look at this area, which NDOT recommended as a historic landscape district during the I-69 construction period. This and a couple other areas in the county. So we wanted to make sure to take time to really recognize that as a historic landscape district. Yeah.
Commissioner Thomas?
Yeah, just to follow up, thank you for being here, by the way, and thank you again for your service on the Historic Preservation Board of Review. At the end of the letter, you just said that the board continues to stand by this letter from May 13th about the February meeting, right?
Yes.
But it says specifically at the end, we offer a negative recommendation on the North Park 2 ordinance amendment and advocate to maintain the existing permitted uses that support the Corey District's original landscape features. So how does that mesh with, we'll go ahead and identify a couple of historic sites, but go ahead and fill it. I'm trying to.
Yeah, you're seeing a contradiction there.
Yeah.
Well, as far as the letter goes, I think essentially where we are on it is that this is still too large of an impact for that area, we would say. We appreciate the recognition of the northern part of it as historic and the move forward on designating that as historic if possible. So if this goes through with a positive recommendation, we definitely would love to see that historic designation on there. As it stands now, we still see that that's quite a bit of fill for no known development beyond that point. That essentially, without it being a trashed landfill, we're essentially building a giant hill right in the area of town where people are coming in and seeing our community for the first time. So when looking at that in relationship to the rest of that area with the historic landscape district and the fact that the county even wants to develop a limestone heritage park there, we didn't want to have a mismatch between those sides.
Okay,
that was important to us.
So the board recommends a negative recommendation, but if it goes through, that's the written commitment you would like to have.
Yes.
I
Yes.
just want to make sure I
Yep.
understand the position.
Yep.
That makes sense.
Thank you
Okay.
very much. Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you for that point of clarification. Yep.
Well, thank you, Mr. Blankenship. We now will continue with asking staff. Oh,
I have
okay.
a question.
Yeah, but we haven't, okay.
If you want to proceed, I don't want to ask my question.
No.
Sorry, I thought this was an open meeting.
No, I just was afraid that the petitioner hasn't had a chance yet. So,
Yeah.
and that we're out of protocol, but we had this question, but now you can ask Mr. Pittsford. Go ahead. Sorry.
Thanks. The question hopefully is not taken as impertinent, but you mentioned future limestone extraction. How does the Historic Preservation Board come to be concerned about future limestone extraction?
That's a very good question. Well, one of the things that's significant is in the repair and restoration of historic structures around our country and world. And so, for example, if you look at September 11th with the Pentagon, the fact that they were able to find limestone that matched from Bybee, that was important. So there are numerous structures around our community, the state, the country, where the matching limestone is in an inactive quarry. And so if there were to be any number of things that could happen in the future, if we wanted to have appropriately matching limestone for repair purposes or even development infill purposes, we have that limestone still within our community. I've heard before we're sitting on 4,000 years worth of limestone. So, and we're not using a whole lot of it right now, but there's always that possibility for repairs or for infill if they were building something next to Grand Central Station and they wanted the limestone to match. We have that here in our stone belt.
Thank you.
Okay, I would like to proceed with the normal progress of our meeting, Mr. Blankenship. Thank you. So we'll return now to members of the Plan Commission if they have questions for staff. If there are no questions for staff, I can't see if Dee has any questions.
I do not. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And then do you have one, Cheryl?
I do.
Yes.
I am unclear. Would you go back to the map that shows the quote hill, please? I am unclear what this is supposed to look like. Could somebody please explain that?
So if it is not developed, right, it's not going to be, there's no intent as of right now. If we just imagined we're driving down I-69, we're looking south, we're looking southwest, we're not going to necessarily, if this was magically full, we would not necessarily see it due to the tree coverage currently next to the on-ramp. And right now, this land is not visible. It is below grade. And maybe something that can help would be our Elevate streetscape. So it is a lot of fill, but they are matching a grade to the south.
Okay.
So visually, you don't see that property as well. Let me see if I can demonstrate. It's 1 minute. You know what, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go on to the on-ramp because that's a little easier. Okay. So this is looking south. You're coming from Ellettsville, you're merging onto I-69. This pretty much right here is the area that's going to be filled. It's currently quarry. Let me double check where I am. You're really not going to be able to see it. So this cell tower right here, if you can see that, is located on the property to the south. That is the grade that they're going to match.
Okay.
When you say the grade they're going to match, you mean the base of the cell tower?
Yes.
Thank you.
Not the top.
I don't want to make assumptions on anything. Thank you.
So that's helpful. I guess what I wanted to see was a before and after contour maps and compare them. Then I would instantly know what it would look like.
We can kind of do that here as well with Elevate, if it helps. Can you see these fine orange lines on the screen?
Yes.
Okay, so here we can see that there's a gentle slope right down, and then there's this, I say small, but it's not small, it's a smaller quarry pit here. It's extremely difficult to take photos of because it's such a large area. I didn't even try when I was on site because it's just not going to communicate what's actually going to change. Okay, 1 second. Where is? So this here is that southern site where the cell tower is like right over here somewhere. This is the tall grade. So it's going to be matched very, very closely right here. And this changed a bit so that they could accommodate a sinkhole on this far right. So these dark lines are contour lines. So it will be extremely steep, which is what you're seeing. I mean,
Yeah.
So all of these lines radiating out, showing how it's kind of smooth out from this grade here to the south.
So it doesn't look like it's being prepared for any particular use. It's just being smoothed out. Is that correct?
They state that they have the intention to develop one day. The use is to just add fill.
So it's a repository for excess fill?
Oh, stockpiling.
Yes, I believe the use is specifically called mass fill and grading.
Yes. Okay, so I think it's time to hear from the petitioner.
I think so too.
So please come to the podium. You'll have I'm going to say 15 to 20 minutes because you've already had, somebody who's opposed to it. So I'm sorry for being not in perfect order of the proceeding, but we had a question that the staff was unable to answer about our packet.
It could be a problem.
So thank you, Mr. Butler.
No problem.
Yeah.
I'll get to some of your questions or some of the inquiries that have already been brought up. So in just a minute, but let me go ahead and introduce our team. I'm Daniel Butler again with Bynum Fanning Associates. I'm a registered civil engineer here in the state of Indiana. Along with me tonight is Mr. Mike Carmen. He helped develop the commitments that you see tonight that was developed out of last meeting to try to get a lot of concerns, a lot of pieces. What are we actually going to get here when this, and we've made those commitments, taken some time, so we hired Mr. Mike Carmen to do some of that. So he's also with us tonight. Representing the ownership group is Mr. AJ Chandler and Mark Nagel. Packing House Road LLC, and they're also part of the Heritage Group. That's the ownership group that helps get these kind of development and future outlook on what this land could be someday. Also online with us tonight is Jason Crothy. He's with Hydrogeology. He normally does a great job with environmental reports and karst feature finding. Just an amazing job. So he's online if you have any questions for him. Our outlook on this piece of land has always been, try to get this to a place. It's been extracted for, as a quarry for a long time. So we're trying to get that back to some of the land elevation that it would be. And so we're just bringing that back up to grade. And so that map that they are showing on your screen right now, you are matching here. And that's the property to the south. So if you are used to topographic maps, that's what we're trying to do. Is we're not creating a hill, we're extending the grade from the south so that it's not going to hinder. We're not creating an extra hump. We're creating more of the grade that's already there that you could see, and for possible future development, not necessarily industrial, possible commercial here. And part of that process is to get that back up to grade in a process that is responsible. And so that's why we've gone, in your commitments, you see different environmental reports, including finding what kind of sensitive areas are on site. We plan, there are a couple that we need to work with, but we don't plan on touching any of the karst features, and that's partially why we did this report. And I heard somebody say in the last meeting, karst features in a quarry. Well, we need to also look at that, though. We can't just assume there's nothing there. And so that's why we went ahead and did that report, and found there are some that are sensitive, and we need to avoid those, and we're not planning on touching those and going around them. This is a very large piece of ground. This is a large scale. So everyone's saying extremely steep. We're not going any steeper than we normally would on any other grading plan. These are 3-to-1 slopes on the outside, and that's what we would recommend about the steepest you would go. And you can drive a mower on that. That's why normally you wouldn't want to go on anything more than that. You can go up to 2-to-1, but we wouldn't recommend it unless you absolutely have to. So this is 3-to-1. This isn't extremely steep. It's just a large scale drawing. So just to be clear on that as well. I think everything else you probably are aware of in response and the commitments to it. So I'll just be able to answer questions, or anybody from our team is available to you.
Okay. Do any other members of your team wish to speak before we get to the questions? Thank you, Mr. Carmen.
Hi, Carmen, also representing the petitioner. The commitment issues that arose out of the last meeting have been put into writing, and that conditions for concerning the use and development of real estate. I thought we had, working through legal, had come to a resolution on all the verbiage, and so I think what Ann referred to is edits in accordance with legal have already been agreed to, but if not, we'll get that incorporated into it because that's a non-issue. So in response to the first meeting, all those matters I believe to be resolved. Now we have tonight now a recommendation for a couple of conditions of approval, a little bit different than the zoning commitments that have been worked on since the last meeting. And those are not a problem either. The designation area, the things as Ann outlined, the labeling of the features on the map and the names, those things, all that is easily taken care of, and Dan's prepared to do that. So we don't see any problem there. And I think Dan has clearly tried to explain what was going on about the grade. There's some, I think, some confusion earlier what's ultimately coming here. You're so used to seeing a project that involves a structure, and this does not involve a structure. And that's a little bit of a twist on what you normally see, and I think that was causing some confusion. It's a leveling out of the grade, and you know, the issue is Devin, I think, presented about the maybe someday his numbers are 100 years, 200 years. We don't know, but what we do know is right now that nobody has found the limestone there to be worthy of the expense of quarrying it so far, and that's how many decades it's been there like that. I mean, and so that the fill operation doesn't take that away. It doesn't get rid of that limestone. It doesn't remove it. Doesn't put it out of use. Yes, it would increase the expense of removing the burden to get to quarrying it. But if we're talking that it's worth doing at some point, it's worth doing it even to have to remove the extra fill, the extra overburden that this would produce on that. So it's not taking limestone out of access. It does make it a little bit more expensive to access it, but it's still there and it's still available if the market says we need it, we use it. And we got a lot of area in the county where that's true already. So again, we think the request is reasonable, is appropriate. Dan has responded to everything I think has come up in terms of protecting the karst feature down in the corner, dealing with the grades, dealing with the environmental reports, the testing, and I'm not sure there's anything left we can do in response to those things that have come back. I think Dan's incorporated that, and we've got a couple issues to deal with on these requested conditions of approval, and we'll be able to do that as well.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Carmen. Mr. Butler?
I just want to add one more thing, that there was, if you could go back to the grading plan, if you would. I think Ms. Munson was asking about, well, does this add to anything in the future? And that's what we're also trying to set this up for. We agree that there should be some historic preservation here, and we tried to outline that best we could and stay away from those areas, and are willing to have some historical district within this. However, I just wanted to point out that the grading also at the extension of the road is also preparing that for the road that is currently planned within the PUD. And so that would also put it at grades, then it would veer to the west into the edge of our property, as this would be a first phase per se to make that functional and be able to happen in the future. So that also is another piece of function that I don't think many of us have pointed out yet, that that's not only for a future pad for maybe a use of industrial commercial, but also that future road that's planned within the PUD now. So just want to point that out as well.
Thank you very much, Mr. Butler. Now, do members of the Plan Commission have questions for the petitioner? Mr. Pittsford.
Yeah, I just have one question for Dan. How much of the downsloping to the north in that particular area that's on the screen is directly attributable to limestone extraction?
On the north side of the property of where we're grading, I would say it has to be nearly 100%.
Okay, which would imply then that the original grade did not have that slope to it before limestone extraction took place.
Now, we know that for sure, yes. Now, do I know the original contours of this area before extraction? No, but I can make assumptions.
But all things being equal, we can assume that with what you're proposing, it will not exceed what it had been before.
I could say it's an accurate assessment without knowing for sure.
Right. Well, the only way it can exceed what was there before is if, yeah, it was really dropped off, which it did. You were assuming that this is a result of limestone extraction then, so. Okay, that was my only question. Thank you.
I agree with that, and I would just point out that this is going down from this property down. It's not going up, so we're not increasing the line of sight that you couldn't see from the south side. And of course, we're not doing anything to take away any line of sight to the historical area from the north. Of course, when you drive on that ramp, you'd still be able, we're not doing anything over there. I don't have any plans. That'd all be protected, historical preservation, green area, that type of stuff.
Okay, any other questions for the petitioner?
I also want to point out with the written commitment that they've put together, if they ever wish to exceed the fill beyond this plan that's on the screen here, that would be a new outline plan amendment, if that written commitment is adopted as written. So they're reducing down the acreage that the development plan would apply to. So I believe it was 27.5 acres out of the 98.6 acres. So this is the maximum that they would be able to achieve on this property without an additional outline plan amendment.
Mr. Ullman?
You threw out a lot of numbers, and I just want to make sure I caught it right. You said that the slope, the shaded area, the dark black area, it's not to exceed a 3-1 slope. Is that?
That is correct.
Okay, cool. Just making sure I caught the numbers right. Thank you.
The reason I pointed it out, I think a few people said extremely steep, and that's, we don't see that as extremely steep. That's a normal grade that we see here in Monroe County for not, sliding or slopes, giving way.
Thank you for illustrating that for us better. Thank you. Well, if there are no further questions, then we'll move on to the people who would, the members of the public who would like to speak in favor of this petition. Would you please come to the podium in this Nat Hill courtroom, or raise your virtual hand online, or make yourself known via the telephone method if it's available? Does anybody want to speak in favor of this petition? Okay, we turn now to members of the public who are opposed to this petition. Please come to the podium. Please raise your virtual hand, or please make yourself known via the phone. Yes, Mr. Blankenship. Yes, you are. You'll have 3 minutes.
So just to clarify, from neighboring limestone experts, the overburden would have historically been 15 to 20 feet. So if you're matching grade to another fill site, probably not the historic ground level before limestone extraction. So as long as you know, like, that's just important to know ahead of time. There are places in southern Monroe County and in Lawrence County where the overburden is up to 50 feet, but not in northern Monroe County. So,
thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you for clarifying, Mr. Blankenship. Okay. Do members of the Plan Commission wish to discuss this? I mean, do you care to rebut that at all, Mr. Butler? Okay. Okay. So do members of the Plan Commission wish to discuss this further, or if you have other questions, or is there a motion?
I have other questions.
Yes,
Madam
Dee.
Chair.
Yes.
Who enforces the quote unquote cleanliness of what would go into the fill site?
I believe that would be a joint effort between planning and stormwater to enforce the written commitment as needed.
Okay, and that's for the next 5 years, which is how long they estimate it would take to fill it.
I'm sorry, are you asking how long that written commitment would be enforceable?
Well, yeah, I mean, they said it'd take them 5 years at 30 loads a day, I think, to fill the thing up. So does that mean planning's out there every day for the next 5 years? What does that mean?
Yeah, so within the written commitment, they offered 2 points. They offered random testing of the soil of the fill. They've offered testing of the fill, and they also offered upstream and downstream water testing. The water testing was proposed as being done quarterly, and the fill testing would be done randomly, and any of that information could be requested by planning or stormwater. So if there was active fill happening on site, planning and stormwater would simply have to work together to come up with a schedule in which we would request that information.
Okay, and then as I said the last time this was presented, there are like 15 sinkholes and what, 5, 7, a bunch of springs. Those are very sensitive areas. It's a watershed area. I read and didn't quite, of course, understand everything about what runs under where and which culvert and so forth, but how is that going to not harm the sinkhole areas?
I believe Ms. Thetonia and Mr. Crothy are online, right? So
Yes, thank you, Margaret. Yes, if Kelsey Thetonia could go ahead and possibly address that question, that would be great.
So,
Hi, Dee. So this is Kelsey. I'm a sport coordinator. So this has been to the Drainage Board twice for discussion so far, and we discussed hydrologic impacts on the site for the fill operations. There's a stream that runs through the middle of the property, so we want to make sure that the floodplain for that stream is protected and that we're not going to be significantly changing the flow through this watershed. Sinkholes will be avoided as much as possible and flow to the sinkholes. Do what we can for mitigation there. I think I would refer to Jason to describe any potential groundwater impacts. I think he may be able to do that better than I could, but by ensuring that we have at least water quality measures in place, which there will be for the active land disturbing and filling activities, as well as anything permanent on site for future development. We're protecting at least the surface runoff before it goes either into the stream or a sinkhole or quarry area. I also want to say that we do have our illicit discharge ordinance that is applicable at all times forever, where if we have discharges of any pollutants, so that whether that's from contaminated fill or just fill sediment itself entering a waterway, we can use that ordinance as enforcement and require cleanup mitigation measures at any point if we find that there are pollutants leaving the site. So.
thank you, Ms. Thetonia. Do members of the Plan Commission have further questions for Ms. Thetonia, or if Mr. Crothy is still online?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Yes. Do you have anything to add, sir?
I would just add that, part of our recommendations that, avoid sinkholes and that, protect them with erosion and sediment control measures if there's any disturbance nearby. That's, anytime you're disturbing the soil around it, that's, that would be when you would have your most impacts to the sinkhole and for the groundwater. So I think as long as, those steps are followed, I don't expect there to be any major impacts from what they're doing out there.
Thank you. Thank you. So we return to us. Yes, Commissioner Thomas?
I am trying to find Exhibit B. I'm wondering if you could help by putting that on the screen, because all of our other exhibits are numbered.
Yeah, Exhibit B is within the written commitment, which is why it's a little different.
Got it. I just want to make sure I have the right one.
My packet was missing Exhibit 10 too.
Okay, so the written commitment is on the screen, and if we scroll down,
There we go.
that is Exhibit A. And as we keep going, we get to the Exhibit B.
Okay, so The agreement is, the condition is, if we so place it, that this area contains specific quarries that would be protected, or this whole area would be protected?
That whole area would be protected.
Okay. Now, if you were to overlay that with the map, that the historic map from the letter, which is Exhibit 11, and you were to overlay that with that letter. Hold on. Let me get to the right page. Yes, that one.
So there's, it's hard to see, but they put a circle right here.
Right.
And then a note that said, this is Old Arlington Road.
So that doesn't help much. Hold on, let me see if another map would work. Sorry. It sounded, here we go. The map on page, it starts on page 31, it goes to 32 for the southern part, right? Yeah, 32, that's the map I'm thinking of.
So that is the underlying map that they used here.
Okay. But it's interesting. It's not the same.
It's trying to.
Right, if you put, I don't know if you can put both maps on the screen at the same time. See, they're not the same. But that's because on the map on page 32, that part is outside of their property? Is that why the maps don't match?
Yes, so they're proposing the green box that goes so much farther. They're going off the petition site onto another property that they own.
Okay. But there's pieces on the map, and thank you for doing this, by the way, this really helps. On the right side of the screen, it goes, it's got a much longer piece to it, but that's outside of their property, correct?
That is within the petition site, the dark black border.
Okay.
This map is that original landscape district that they evaluated for National Registry.
Aha.
Okay.
Yes.
But there are other pieces there. The Hunter Stone Quarry, 1895 to 1910. And then there's the quarry post 1975, Consolidated Quarry 1910, 1929. So all of this, rail spur, all of this, we don't have a sense of what's left of these other quarries that are outside of this green area or outside of that black, dark outline box.
What's left as in, do those other quarries still exist?
Yeah.
Okay. Most of them do. The far right one is the one that would mainly be impacted, which is closest to where we saw that ramp when we were using
Right.
Street View.
Right.
That still exists. Obviously, the long hole has been bisected now. And then they show another quarry to the south. I personally have not visually seen that one, but I might have just missed it. I believe it's still there.
So in the letter from the Historic Preservation Board of Review, there's a reference to the specific quarries that were outlined by the state as they were building I-69 as historic places of historic interest that would meet the state requirements to join the state register. But that doesn't mean that they were thorough in capturing what's in that area. Right? Because there are other things on this map on page 32 that it would be interesting to see what's left. I don't know what's left from 1892, 1895. You know, who knows?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I get what this, but I think what the state was doing was related to that ramp that they were building to 69. I also, to Jerry's point, we also don't know what kind of land disturbance was done by the building of the roadway either. So that's another addition to what you already noted. I'm just really, I don't know. I'm uncomfortable with this because I feel like we don't have the data we need. That's my concern. And I don't know where to get it, and I don't know how to get it. To cover over something that could potentially be a historic site, because the state did something they had to do to build a ramp, but there's other pieces that are farther away from the highway. I don't know that anybody surveyed them or looked at them, and I don't know the story behind them. So that's the difficulty for me. But yeah, thank you.
My understanding from the previous Historic Preservation Board, and I got educated on this area, is that this report was created to evaluate what was left, and that the black outline represents the most, what could be nationally registered.
Right.
So my understanding is that this is kind of a historic map of, yes, what used to be there, but that those are the structures that are still there. So,
Right.
you know, the quarries that are in a darker black, like the long pole in the
Right.
mill.
Right.
So I didn't see any other structures on the site.
Right. Well, they would be spurs, holes, quarries that have been partially filled in. We don't know. I mean, that's the thing is, yes, if they're outlined in black within this larger, heavy black box, that means that there is something there. Yes, that's exactly what that means. But what I'm saying is I don't know what was surveyed. Was that whole corner surveyed by the state? I don't know, and maybe Cheryl knows.
I think a review of the historic report prepared for I-69 and the Shard report for the nomination of this district would be worth carrying out, and just seeing what you can match from their mapping of what they surveyed and identified.
Okay. Drew Myers does have his hand raised. He is the staffing planner.
Right.
Drew, do you have anything that might assist us with this?
Yes, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. So I just wanted to share information, and pretty much got it right through the board meetings that were held regarding this petition and the information that was discussed. It is my understanding that the report that you see on the right side of the screen, that emboldened area, is where the state consultants that were hired were able to identify resources that are in standing or good enough standing to establish some or be eligible for the establishment of a historic landscape district. And it is likely, although I don't know for sure, that they surveyed more of the area in search of such resources, but those said resources were likely either obliterated or so much destroyed or altered that they did not constitute as a resource that would be worth preserving within the district that is proposed on the screen. So that's just some of the information that was conveyed and talked about during the Historic Preservation Board of Review meetings with respect to this.
I appreciate that, and I agree that that's what those lines mean, and the black boxes within the black boxes mean. I just don't know what what happened, what was surveyed, was the whole area surveyed, or maybe they didn't, and I don't know that answer, and I don't know if anyone knows that answer.
For me, this is really a question about land use and land management. And I'm not convinced this is, I mean, although this land can be used like this, is it advisable that it be used like this? And that question I don't have an answer to. Yes, and then I'll give the petitioners another chance to respond, because this is a serious deliberation. I want to make sure we all, and I see Ms. Thetonia also has her hand raised.
I don't want to have too many hats on, but that's just the nature of living here at 42 years. So my recollection as former chair of the Historic Preservation Board during the I-69 Section 106 period is that they explored essentially throughout Monroe County at least a mile from the center line of proposed I-69. That means that they looked at every single structure to the best of their ability, including Virginia Iron Works, which was lost to I-69. And so, well, wasn't part of it disrupted? Something, okay, there's something I don't know. Anyway, secrets in Monroe County. So anyway, these landscape districts were what the state came back to us with as recommendations for National Register. One of the things that's a feature of a landscape district, especially when you're looking at something like limestone extraction, is that they understand that Reed Quarries is going to continue quarrying, and they understand that they're going to move things around, and they might fill some things in, and they might take some things out of the ground. So the main spirit of it was the nature of the landscape as a historic district, rather than bit by bit every piece of soil. So I imagine that the black box does show what they found to be the most valuable to save, and anything that's not in the larger black box was too far gone or altered enough beyond original recognition that they didn't deem it as significant to contributing to that historic landscape site. Yeah.
So thank you, Mr. Blankenship.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so Ms. Thetonia?
Thank you, Margaret. I just have a quick statement about just the fill material in general. I'm speaking, I guess, from the side of managing the stormwater utility, and that there is a need to have fill sites that are legal, approved, and regulated. So I noticed this with my crew. We pay money to take fill to Rogers Group. It's a struggle to find good places to take fill material. City of Bloomington Utilities, they have a very similar but larger scale issue where we need places to take fill. And the reason why that a utility creates so much fill material is that if you repair a pipe underground, you can't replace whatever you just dug up. You have to take and clean backfill so it meets the standards. So we generate a lot of fill from just general operations and maintenance of the underground infrastructure. And I think I recognize the need for a fill site. And if it doesn't happen here, it's going to happen somewhere in the county, right? So I am, I don't know, I've asked Brian McFaniel, haven't spoken directly with the owner, but if they would allow, local government to use some of this fill area, I think it would help us. And that's something I would like to discuss in the future, because we are all in need of places to take fill material. So, yeah, if you can do it in a way, in an area that it's done in a way that protects surface water, groundwater, reduces or minimizes the amount of sediment leaving the site, doing it in a way that's regulated, I support that. But I just wanted to state from my other side managing utility, just the need for fill in general, that they're not just bringing it in from other places and putting it there. It's generated by other operations, other cut and fill operations. And yeah, so.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Thetonia. Thank you. Okay, so Mr. Carmen or Mr. Butler, would you like to respond to all this further discussion?
I don't think there'd be much to add to that. That's exactly why, I think we're killing two birds with one stone. Sorry for the phrase, but where you can, reuse, create this ground for future economic development and a future road, while also having a place where, that if you do it right, if you have testing, and that's what we want to do, then we believe this is a good spot to be able to add to something for the future. And then also, that is our understanding of those maps when we were given them. I think it's the same thing that we've already discussed, but that's why we are preserving within and a little bit outside of the dark black line, believing that those are the most desirable areas to save, and we wish to do that as part of this project as well. So I'll just add that, and that's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Butler. Is there any other discussion from members of the commission?
I just want to, put it out there that I see this as a phenomenal use for this property, because it is opening up for so much economic viability that's otherwise not there. I understand that there's a potential for future use of some or one or two or all of these quarries at some point, but to sit around with our hands tied on 30 acres of potential economical valuable land that could be making, revenue and jobs and everything for our community, waiting for that singular or two events that deems necessary for us to dig out a couple rocks, I think seems like a waste of land. And I think that, Ms. Lithonia said it great, that, it is needed. It's a needed use. We do have the need for a place to take land or take fill. And stormwater seems to be very much accepting of the plan as it stands, as long as they make efforts to avoid the sinkholes, which I commend the petitioner and his crew or their crew for the work that they're putting, because they are trying to make everybody happy, and it's not easy, but you can see a lot of efforts being made. So
thank you, Mr. Ullman.
And Dee has her hand raised.
Okay, Dee.
Yes, thank you. There's no, that I recall seeing anyway, I didn't see any requirement as to where this fill comes from. I mean, is it going to be shipped in from South Bend, or does that really matter? As long as it's clean and so forth.
I believe that they addressed this in their letter, but I'm sure it would be helpful if Mr. Butler wants to clear over that.
Yeah, absolutely. We are not allowing for anyone and everybody to come to this. This is for their use, and they know the projects that they're coming from, and be crushed appropriately, and it's to be tested, not only from contaminants, but for stability on the site. And so, no, we're not just allowing anyone to come back there with a truck, because they're the ones responsible for the testing. If it doesn't test right, then there has to be some remediation. And so we absolutely know where it'll be coming from, because they're going to control it. Now, if the county or somebody wishes to also be on that, then we would have to make sure that we know where that's coming from, and there would be no contaminants coming from those sites. We're not allowing many parties to access this for those reasons.
Thank you, Mr. Butler.
Yeah, that isn't exactly what I meant, but thank you. I just wondered if the owners were going to be bringing it in from different places. I'm just thinking about if it's fill, I guess as long as it's not asphalt and so forth, it's okay fill wherever it's from. But I wondered about that because The ownership of this company goes is about 4 companies up. And so I wondered what that meant. So thank you.
She's correct. No asphalt or anything like that. We are committed to that.
I remain concerned that the original letter from the Historic Preservation Committee said no. You know, so I remain concerned about that.
I think that they also, though, went on to say that, you know, yeah, I mean, in a perfect world, we all want something, but when we work together to find a solution, we find, you know, hey, we can be accepting of it. Let's just work together by putting in these points, and that's kind of what they've, you know, I didn't get hung up on them saying no, because they went on to say, you know, we can be accepting of it. We would just like to also be involved in preserving what is there.
So anybody else or a motion? Any further discussion? Well, it doesn't appear that there's a motion, so.
Not yet. I have a question. It's just now occurring to me about the nature of the fill that is coming into this site and the company's commitment to testing for soil contaminants. Who from the county reviews these actions and the results of their testing? Does anybody?
So it would be a collaboration between stormwater and planning to request that information that they've offered and on a schedule. Yep.
Okay.
Is there any, I'm sorry.
I think that's good for the public to know that.
Since this is so close to some Superfund sites.
It is.
Do we have any requirement or extra diligence that we are due, Mr. Alcoma, at the EPA?
I'm not aware that the site is designated itself. Unless Kelsey has anything to add. Kelsey has requested that they list out specifically what type of soil contaminants they will be testing for within their written commitment. So that is a piece of criteria within our recommendation.
Thank you.
I can make a motion if you want one.
Go ahead, Mr. Ullman.
In the case of PUO-23-6, I recommend we forward a positive recommendation to the county commissioners, subject to the highway department and stormwater report, and the following conditions. The written commitment is updated to include A, revisions requested by county legal as shown in Exhibit 10. B, list of soil contaminants that will be tested for. And C, includes the real estate description of parcel number 5300007000004. And with a second condition being that the petitioner attend the Board of Historic Preservation meeting to discuss areas that could be locally designated on the development plan. Petitioner shall name quarry holes protected under Exhibit B as historical named in the I-69 report presented in the packet.
With the fact that all county professional staff, directors, and coordinators have agreed that this is an appropriate amendment to the PUO, I second it.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to send a favorable recommendation to the county commissioners for PUO-23-6 with the conditions as stated and as shown in the staff report. A vote yes is a vote to send a favorable recommendation to the commissioners. D. Owens?
the Board of Historic Preservation vote weighs very heavily with me, and for that reason, I vote no.
Pittsford,
Yes.
Julie Thomas,
Ugh. I'm going to vote no.
Margaret Clemens,
This area is a sensitive area, and I know we're talking about mitigation efforts and testing requirements and everything, but I mean, the money that's been invested thus far by the nation to clean up these sites and to preserve them for our own community's own well-being, I don't feel that I'm ready to give a yes. I'm going to vote no. I'm not sure how disturbing this land might affect other land nearby.
Cheryl Munson,
This is very difficult for me because I heard the concerns of Historic Preservation Board members from their initial letter, and then I heard from past President Mr. Devin Blankenship speaking to us this evening. And expressing that the concerns of the board were being met. That was my takeaway. That the company had taken steps to preserve the historic features that had been identified. And as a longtime member of the board in the past, and its former president, I want to pay attention to that board. Also, I was very grateful to our stormwater director, Ms. Thatonia, who seems to have stipulated that the concerns for water quality, stormwater quality, were covered by the plan for monitoring. Therefore, I'm going to vote yes, even though this motion may fail. And if it does, I hope to see greater clarity in the presentation of impact areas and construction areas or deposition areas, so that it's very clear as to what is going where and what can be affected by the plan. And I can tell the staff more about this. So my vote is yes.
okay. And then Edward Ullman,
I'm gonna listen to everything that the professionals on staff around the county, from stormwater to planning and everything involved, have put forth, and support this with a yes vote.
okay. The motion fails 3-3. So we are missing from tonight's meeting, Tron Enright Randolph, Scott Ferris, Jeff Morris. So those would be the other three members that, if this were continued, would be voting on this, or we can entertain another motion.
I move to continue this to our next meeting.
I'll second that.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to continue this to the June, let's see what that would be, June 18th Plan Commission meeting. A vote yes is a vote to continue. Margaret Clemens,
Yes.
Cheryl Munson,
Yes.
Edward Ullman,
Yes.
Dee Owens,
Yes.
Jerry Pittsford,
With very sincere apologies to the petitioner for being forced to come back for another meeting with the chance of being trumped by the recommendation of historic preservation over professional staff. Yes.
Thomas?
Yes.
Okay, the motion is approved to continue this to the June 18th meeting by a vote of 6-0.
And I'd just like to state for the record that we all have great respect for our professional staff. So there's no condescension there. Thank you for coming tonight. Thank you for presenting this proposal to us. And we look forward to seeing you again in a month. Thank you. Well, we're moving on now to the third item on our agenda, which is really the second, because the second was continued by staff. And this is Westgate on Third, Planned Unit Development Outline Plan Amendment 1. And this is the final hearing concerning 137.99 plus or minus acre parcel in Section 2 of Van Buren Township at 4755 West State Road 48. And Ms. Crecelius, if you would review this with us, we'd be grateful.
Absolutely. Like the prior one, this is a final hearing, so I will just offer the updates from the last meeting. So we are located in Van Buren Township. The property is 38 acres. So here currently is the development plan. So tonight we are looking at just a few amendments. So one of the updates is that the petitioner has withdrawn their request to remove the elevators from buildings 1 through 3. So there are 3 requests for this outline plan amendment. On your screen, we have, they did provide us with a few more current drone photos so we can actually see what the site looks like. As you can see, the whole site has been graded and some foundations and parking are going in. So I'm just going to flip through a couple of these now. Okay, so our summary is the 3 updates. So 1, these are the requests that remain. So number 1, adding the phasing plan for construction and occupancy. Number 2, conversion of the 11 detached covered parking structures to open surface parking. 3, the removal of 3 elevators from 3 buildings has been withdrawn. So the updated documents reflecting this change will be required to be submitted before the county commissioner hearing. And the petitioner has stated that they expect to bring the removal of the elevators back as a separate PUD outline amendment request within this year. And then 4, replacement of the community garden with a pickleball court and outdoor exercise equipment. That is the primary update. So staff is still recommending forwarding a positive recommendation to the county commissioners for the planned unit outline plan amendment request subject to the Monroe County Highway Department reports.
Yes, Commissioner Thomas.
I have a quick question. There was a note about the phasing and ensuring that the connection with Park Square was completed at the outset instead of later. So in other words, that would be part of phase 1.
Yes, I believe we addressed that. I believe Paul was on last time, and we did address that would be completed. Yes.
Okay. What about the other points of entry onto that property? I'm looking for the map again because I've
so there are 2 points of entry from Park Square Drive.
Right.
And then a emergency access only from the Rail King Drive road stub.
Right. Okay. So is it both entry points that would have to be completed as part of phase 1 or only the one that's in phase 1?
Let me pull it up.
Because it says that they have to get that done, paved very first thing. There's 2 different, one's in phase 3-6, the other one's phase 1-7. So I'm assuming it's the phase 1, but I didn't know if it was both.
Could it be the one's final lift of asphalt and the other one is simply access?
I don't, that's why I'm asking. I'm just curious about that.
If you don't mind, we could ask Ryan.
Okay,
Okay,
thank you.
thank you.
It's not a hugely important question. It's sort of just been bothering me a little.
Okay,
I'm just
I know
curious.
he knows the phasing plan narrative by the
it's-
back of his
Yeah,
hand, so.
it's a point of curiosity more than anything. So I'm done with my questions for
Okay,
staff.
so we'll turn now to the petitioner and the petitioner's representative. You'll have 15 minutes to discuss the proposed changes with us. Thank you.
Good evening. To discuss the finishing of Park Square Drive, the County Highway Department instructed that it's at least 25 feet off the center of Park Square Drive is finished in phase 1 before any occupancy is allowed. So you see it in phase 3, that's further than 25 feet from Park Square. So everything 25 feet, it's a very thin red line. If you have the,
Oh, goodness.
yeah, it's hard to see,
Huh.
but it's been thought out for sure.
So you would only be completing the phase 1, the entry point at phase 1 at the beginning?
Completely finished, full
Yeah.
top,
Yeah,
yes.
okay,
It
thank
did
you.
25 feet back into our,
Okay,
yes.
thank you.
And the remainder would be binder, is that correct?
That's correct.
Thank you. Not loose gravel, not,
The following the pictures. Yeah, I've already got binder down. Yes, sir.
Okay, did you have anything further for your presentation to us?
I guess just to, is it okay to discuss why we took the elevators off of the petition?
I'd like to know.
Sure.
Sure. Okay, so we heard your concerns about accessibility. We also heard your concerns towards the end of last month's meeting about predatory rent rates and having 60% of your renting constituents paying more than 30% of their average median income, which is rent burdened as a category. And we are exploring options into those 3 buildings, the first floor in those 3 buildings, and not a vote tonight, but if you had any comment, we were thinking of exchanging, well, I should add to the beginning of that point, we did hear as well about first floor retail commercial underneath apartments not doing well in Monroe County and in Bloomington. So could we find a higher and better use for this space by both adding accessible apartment units on the first floor, as well as solving our issue of having retail spaces as they're built with the center corridor, which I know we explained at length last month, not having enough space to have a wide range of people and our tenants come in and lease those spaces as commercial. So I would love to hear your thoughts on something like that. I know that Monroe County does not have a workforce housing program, but Bloomington does. And we kind of started by following their protocols, which is, long story short, it's about a 30% discount on rent if you could prove that you are currently working.
Okay, does any, sir?
I have a question. I want him to stay if he might.
Mr. Pittsford?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Thank you. What is the average annual cost of one elevator over the span of its useful life?
I don't have the answer.
The one in our.
Estimate is $30,000 to $40,000 a year
That's what I.
$30,000 to $40,000 a year?
of upkeep.
What is the initial cost of one elevator to be installed?
The elevator itself is 200,000 or more. And then you add all of the trades that go in to help, like a steel beam has to be installed.
Okay, so with $30,000 to $40,000 annually for maintenance, service, certification, insurance, how many units are served by one elevator?
10 on each floor, so 20.
3,000 to 4,000 or 15 to $2,000 annually per unit for the elevator.
You
If my math.
multiply it by 3, you can either take all 3 buildings or take one. So yes.
I'm talking about one elevator.
One elevator.
I specified one elevator.
Yes, one
I'm
elevator,
an
one
English teacher. I'm a retired English teacher. I can't do multiple math equations in my head. I gave you one to make it easy for me. You want to complicate it, but let's just do per elevator cost. We're looking at $1,500 to $2,000 per year per resident.
Just on maintenance.
Just for the maintenance costs.
Yes.
Okay.
Commissioner Thomas?
Yeah, it would be great if that money went back to something else that would benefit the residents. But we don't know. But I do appreciate the idea of perhaps exchanging out having an elevator for having accessible apartments. I think that addresses the issue. And it would also help ensure that you get some renters versus having an empty space. So I do appreciate that. I think that's a wonderful idea. And kudos, and I look forward to seeing that petition, and I don't have any other questions about this one. Thank you.
Do other members of the Plan Commission have questions? Mr. Ullman?
Not necessarily a question, more of a comment, but I do kind of want to echo what Commissioner Thomas said about, a big fan of the idea of the lower floor becoming accessible. And, I was in support of annexing the elevators from the start, but if the efforts are made to make sure that the accessible housing is still there, that, yeah. And maybe a feather for your cap, but after the last meeting, I went full research mode on trying to figure out elevators, and I found that only one property that had similar demographics as this one that had elevators. I found over 30 buildings that were 3 to 4 stories that didn't have elevators. So in Bloomington and Monroe County, the lack of elevator is the norm. So you're not breaking from norm by removing elevators. So thank you.
Okay. Yes, Councilor Munson.
So I just had a question about the numbering schemes to make sure I understand this. The colors refer to neighborhoods 1 through 7, is that correct?
There'll be a construction phase for land use certificates.
That's for land use certificates. But the buildings are numbered 1, 2, 3, etc. And they are in land use phases 8, and 7. Is that?
The buildings with the elevators are in 8 and 7.
8 and 7. And those are among the ones that will be built first?
Last.
Last.
Yes.
Okay. So, because you did say 1 and the entryway from the road. So.
The dark red is phase 1. And then, yes, move 2 in sequential order from there.
So buildings 1, 2, and 3 will be at the end of your construction.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. Okay, so we'll hear from the public, and if the public anybody speaks in opposition to this petition, you'll have a 5-minute rebuttal period.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there members of the public who would like to speak in favor of this petition or this amendment? If so, please come to the podium, please raise your hand, or please dial in. We see no one. So that being said, are there members of the public who are opposed to this change and this planned unit outline plan amendment that has been presented tonight? Okay, I'd just like to make one comment of note that this is major housing development that the county has approved, despite statements to the contrary, that we've been not supportive of housing, but we approved this a few years ago, and this is several hundred units, over 300 units. So I'd like that to be noted and appreciated. And with regard to our housing affordability issue, we also have kind of depressed salaries around here because of the high student population. They typically are not our highest earners while they're in school. So just so that we understand what we're dealing with and we move forward all together. Now, with that being said, is there a motion or further discussion? No?
I can make a motion
Okay.
unless there's further discussion. I don't want to step on anybody's toes.
Oh, great, Mr. Ullman.
In regards to PUO-T4-1, I recommend forwarding a positive recommendation to County Commissioners for the planned unit outline plan amendment request, subject to the Monroe County Highway Department's report.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to send a favorable recommendation for PUO-24-1, which is the Westgate on Third Plan Unit Development Outline Plan Amendment 1. And I'll just mention briefly, since this amendment has changed since the last meeting, that there will be 3 changes incorporated in this outline plan, which is the phasing plan, the removal of 11 covered parking structures, and then the conversion of the community garden to pickleball courts. So those are the 3 changes. A vote yes is a vote to send a favorable recommendation.
Could I just interrupt for just 1 second, Jackie? You know, because the bottom floor might be converted to housing, do we have any idea how many housing units we're talking here, total?
That would have to come for a future outline
I
plan
see.
amendment,
Okay.
in which they would
Okay, great.
get it, yeah.
Thank you.
So that's why I wanted
Okay.
to make sure that was clear. So,
Okay.
a vote in favor is a vote to send a favorable recommendation for the outline plan amendment as stated by Ms. Crecelius and reiterated. Cheryl Munson,
Yes.
Edward Ullman,
Yes.
Dee Owens,
Yes.
Jerry Pittsford,
Yes.
Julie Thomas,
Yes.
Margaret Clements.
Yes?
Okay, the motion passes 6-0.
And we'd like to thank you. We're glad you're here. We're glad you're building those apartments. It looks like you're making great progress, and thank you for being valued members of our community. Thank you. Okay, we're moving on now to, pardon me, Mr.
Sorry, I was thinking of the
Okay.
wage.
Okay, we're moving on to Anya LLC. This is case number REZ-24-1, and this concerns 2.48 plus or minus acres parcels in Section 3 of Van Buren Township at 5991 West State Road 48. And Mr. Brown, if you would kindly review this with us.
Thank you. So this was heard during the April 16th, 2024 meeting. Would the Plan Commission appreciate a full run through of what the intentions are, or just a brief description of any updates that have been made?
Updates.
Updates. Keep it brief.
Okay. So really the only update is that in the original petition in April, this was listed as a proposed convenience store use with gasoline sales, service sales as an accessory use. However, review for the definition of convenience store includes gasoline sales, so putting that in as an accessory use was found to be redundant, and thus it has been removed. Other than that, there have been no significant changes. The plan is still the same. Our recommendation is still the same. Staff recommends forwarding a positive recommendation for the rezone request from Estate Residential 1, RE1 to limited business for 2.48 acres based on the findings of fact that the property is adjoining a comprehensive plan that is marked institutional to the west, that the property is proximate to non-residential uses, and the property is accessible to public utilities as well as public infrastructure, including sidewalks. This is subject to the following condition of approval, that the site plan design is to delineate and preserve the wetland on the property.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Okay, are there questions for staff? No? So.
I do have one.
Oh, yes.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I didn't get my little electronic hand up in time. I'm sorry. Yeah, my question is, it says that there's a water feature and it shows it's surrounded in blue on the drawing. But what is that water feature? And when I look at the completed drawing for where the gas pumps will be and where the store is, I don't see what the treatment of that water feature is. Can you explain that?
I can I believe that's the wetland might be sort of just simply a pond or a drainage area.
Is it that little blue dot?
As for why it is not reflected on the site plan, I believe that it's actually to the south of areas where they're proposing any building or paving.
D, just as a clarification point, because I found the site plan to be a little bit confusing. This site plan, as shown on the screen right now, is only showing the first parcel that is outlined as part of the 2 parcels that are to be rezoned. So if you actually measure out those dimensions, as Daniel stated, can you go to the site plan? See that orange box to the north?
Yes.
That's the southern boundary of that site plan roughly lines up with that location. So that's why it's confusing. It's not showing a site plan for the entire 2.6 acre property. It's that
Okay,
small
yeah.
portion up top.
That's an entirely different story then. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so Mr. Sayre, if you would like to come to the podium and please sign in, you'll have 15 minutes to discuss with us your rezone.
Thank you, and I don't think I'll take that quite as long as 15 minutes available. No major updates. We did discuss several concerns at the last meeting. We did follow up with NDOT. We understand we need to submit a traffic operations analysis application. We're not yet there in terms of this development, but if this were approved by this board and the commissioners, then we would of course have to apply for that permit because we will need 2 driveways on State Road 48 for that to make sense. Yet my apologies on the conceptual site plan. Thank you for the question, Ms. Owens. I think that's a fair answer, and we have no problem with the staff recommendation. We're in full agreement that those findings do support the request for rezone. I did want to respond to a question that Mr. Pittsford had, because he gave us a good question about could we limit potential uses on the use table, and my honest answer is I think there are some. I didn't find any immediately jumping out at me as ones we should go ahead and remove, and I started thinking about the CDO, and then I was thinking, let's just leave it LB just for simplicity purposes, but our hope is, of course, to develop the convenience store. I'm happy to have further discussion on that, but that's kind of where we are at with that concern. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sayre. If you don't mind remaining there, I'll ask my colleagues if they have questions for you. Mr. Ullman?
Kind of maybe a dumb question, but can you pronounce that word for us, the LLC? Because I've spent too much time trying to figure it out on my own. Mananya is what I've been saying fast and confident, so I hope that's right. Mananya. Mananya.
Nanya.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Kind of like manana, but not.
Mananya. Very nice.
Yes,
I have some, I have a suggestion for limiting, and it's not, I don't think, too limiting considering the size of the property and the existence of the wetland. I think most of this will happen anyway. But looking at the full menu of options on limited business, would there be an interest in, let me get to the right page here. I got off the page because I had to go look at the driveways again. Okay, so on page 74 of our packet, there are a number of uses that I don't think will fit anyway. But so let me ask it this way. Would you, your client, be willing to limit your limited business uses, pardon the pun, to the items listed under business and personal services, which is on page 75, and retail and wholesale trade on page 76 only. And I would add this, that on page, what's on page 75 under business and personal services, to remove boat storage, although I don't think you ever need to do it anyway. And one more. I had it, hold on. There's another, convenience storage. And the reason I'm asking for this is because this is as Mr. Pittsford pointed out, this is a gateway into the community. Mm-hmm. And so you can do in limited business anything you want. This would be, you'd have to agree to this, under business and personal services minus convenience storage minus boat storage, and anything under retail and wholesale trade is fine as well. But everything else would be off the table. Would your client be amenable to that limitation?
I think so, but I would need to confirm that.
Okay.
And I've taken notes on that.
Okay, because it would allow you to do convenience store, gas station, gift shop, gun shop, office, legal service. I mean, there's a lot on here that would be allowed. But I'm just thinking about this, somebody's driving into Monroe County for the first time on Highway 48, which rarely happens, I understand. But we are near the airport. So coming out of the airport, you come over, what do you see? A boat storage? I don't think so. Right. So that would be my preference to see it. Mm-hmm. I will go ahead and vote today as if that were approved, but this still has to come before the commissioners. And we would definitely need to see, I would need to see that this limitation's been accepted or something similar. Yes. Before I would vote yes again on it. So okay. I just want to put that caveat out there. I appreciate all the work that's been done. I appreciate what Ms. Thatonia said about my concerns regarding a gas station in this particularly sensitive stormwater area. Everything's under control and it sounds good. So, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Yes.
So a question on that. I don't disagree with Commissioner Thomas on those uses. How is that going to be managed? As someone who calls the office often, knowing, I would look at a list of uses here. How would I know those would not be on there?
So if there's a limitation accepted by the petitioner to this petition, it would be in the form of a written commitment, which would be recorded. Mm-hmm. We manage those written commitments and just leave notes for ourselves. You as a potential person wanting to purchase a property, you would just see the zoning. You would not necessarily know from the zoning map that those limitations exist unless you were geared towards looking up a little bit more title history. The recorded commitment will be tied to that title.
And I lean heavily, on like calling the office. So obviously you guys would just guide anyone that was if there was another use or somebody else that wanted to purchase that property, they would just call the planning department and you would probably guide them, but the general public, it'd be a little harder for them to find.
Well, unfortunately, from my perspective, with the way things have been organized at the city for the ease of building, a lot has been done that a lot of people don't want. So if we remove a couple of uses, that probably would be in the fair disclosure in the sale of the property and the person would have to do the due diligence. Yeah.
And I only speak from experience. This recently happened within the city where something got missed because it wasn't in the general public. It cost them dollars, which was unfortunate. So.
Yes, so it's something that we do not take lightly to amend a zone to limit its permitted uses, because essentially you're creating a PUD in some sense, because we rely on the ordinance at hand, we look at the zoning map, so it takes a lot of more, it takes more administrative oversight to make sure that those types of things don't get lost. I will say, as it relates to the CDO, if we don't think that some of the uses that are permitted in LB should be permitted in the future district, which will also be called LB, then we should maybe limit those by right, and then there wouldn't be that confusion by the public, and also there would be, you know, I guess, better suitability of those uses within those named districts. So it could be something that we further discuss under the CDO as well.
So
And again, I don't disagree with removing those uses. I don't think they're appropriate.
we might want to remove them from the CDO, you know, more storage. We have enough of that. So, and boat storage perhaps too, as by right. Thank you, Mr. Sear. Yes.
Yeah,
Mr.
as you tell Chris, and nobody in the county is immune from that. Look how many times the commissioners have tried to locate a jail. Just to find out that that's not an acceptable use.
The city said no. Yeah.
The city said no, and yet they blame me because it's not in the city.
Right, right. Put it in the city, but no.
Thank you,
But
Mr.
no.
Sear. We're gonna,
I'm sorry, but sometimes it just has to be said.
we're gonna open it up now
The
to the
irony is not
public,
lost
and
on
if
me,
if the public remonstrates or is opposed to this, then you'll have a 5-minute rebuttal. Are there members of the public who would like to speak in favor of this? Please come to the podium, raise your virtual hand, or call in. Are there members of the public who are opposed? Please make yourself known. If not, I bring it back to the members of the Plan Commission for further discussion and or a vote.
Can you put the recommended motion up, please?
Yes, there we go.
Thank you. In case SPP-23-4, this is a request.
I'm sorry, that, I don't know why that number is up there. That is the Springwoods major subdivision that was approved a while back.
Yeah.
Is it?
It's in the title of the slide, so that's an easy mistake
Yeah,
to make.
I'm sorry.
It's REZ 24-1.
Oh, that's why I wrote that down even.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And forget everything I said before. In case PUO-24-1, this is a request for rezone. Actually, it's a change in a planned unit, right?
It's REZ 24-1.
All right, REZ 24-1, a request for a rezone from state residential to limited business for 2.48 acres based on the findings of fact that the property is adjoining a comprehensive plan that is marked institutional to the west, that the property is proximate to non-residential uses, and the property is accessible to public utilities as well as public infrastructure, including sidewalks. This motion is subject to the following condition of approval: that the site plan is delineated to preserve the wetland on the property. Do you want me to add the change in uses?
Me?
No, because that's a commitment on that.
Yeah, it has to
Right.
be a commitment.
That is my motion and so.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay.
All right, there's been a motion and a second to send a favorable recommendation of REZ-24-1, which is the Manania rezone from RE1 to LB. This is the final hearing, and it includes the conditions stated by Mr. Pittsford, as well as stated in the staff report. A vote yes is a vote to take this forward with a positive recommendation to the commissioners. Jerry Pittsford?
Yes.
Julie Thomas?
Yes, with the caveat I mentioned earlier regarding the commissioner's hearing.
Margaret Clemens?
Yes.
Cheryl Munson?
Yes.
Edward Ullman?
Yes.
Dee Owens?
Yes.
Okay, the motion carries 6-0. And just as a note, if there is a written commitment added between the Plan Commission and the county commissioners, that could be something that is just addressed by the county commissioners.
Yes.
If it restricts the uses.
Yes.
If that comes forward, but we'll review that with legal if that
Yes.
is the case.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Seer. Thank you. Okay, we're moving on to our last item, and this is new business, ZOA-24-1, amendment to the Monroe County zoning ordinance preliminary hearing. This is also a waiver of final hearing has been requested for Chapter 814 zoning ordinance permits and certificates. So Ms. Nestor Jelen, if you would be so kind as to review this with us.
Sure, this is a fairly straightforward change that we're requesting. So under the section C, we're asking that the part in red be added, which states that the original part of the ordinance that's not changing, it says the administrator may condition approval on the receipt of other permits, certificates, and/or approvals. We've clarified that it's section 815-3C, and as necessary to ensure compliance with the provisions of the ordinance, e.g., an approval conditioned on relocating a structure to comply with the relevant setback provision. And the reason for this text amendment is just to make sure that our ability to condition site plan approvals stays in line with ever-evolving case law. I think this is also related to the signs ordinance that we recently adopted. And Dave, I don't know if you have anything you want to add to this text amendment, but this is recommended by the legal department to make sure that we're staying up to date.
Does anybody have any questions of staff?
Motion to approve?
Well, let's open it to the public.
Oh,
Are there members of the public who would like to speak in favor of this petition? Are there members of the public who would like to speak in opposition? Please either come to the podium, make yourself known on virtual media, or call in. If not, then Mr. Ullman, if you would be so kind as to make a motion.
In regards to the administrative, is it administrative business? I guess not. No, it's not.
No, it's new business.
It's a text amendment.
Yeah, in regards to the new business, the text amendment presented by Jackie, I move that we approve the red text that was presented.
And would that be under ZOA-24-1, Mr. Ullman?
Yes, that would be under ZOA-24-1.
Thank you.
And would that be forwarding to the county commissioners with positive recommendations, sir?
Okay, I'm done.
Nah, you're doing great.
Yes,
Just
yes,
hang in there.
that would be.
Just follow. You're good, you're good, you got it. You got
Okay.
it.
Okay.
I need the slide.
I will second.
Okay, great.
What would you be saying? No.
Make her repeat it all.
Okay, so this is a motion and a second for a zoning ordinance amendment 24-1, which is an amendment to Chapter 814. This includes a waiver of final hearing. A vote yes is a vote to send a favorable recommendation to the commissioners with a waiver of final hearing. Julie Thomas?
Yes.
Margaret Clemens?
Yes.
Cheryl Munson?
Yes.
Edward Ullman?
Yes.
Dee Owens?
Yes.
Jerry Pittsford?
Yes.
Okay, motion carries 6-0. And I will note, we do have under our rules of procedure an ability for anyone in the public to speak for items not on the agenda. It's limited to 3 minutes. So if there's anyone that wishes to speak for items not on the agenda, just before you adjourn, I want to make that known.
Okay, if there are members of the public who would like to speak about things that are not on the agenda, please come to the podium. Please raise your virtual hand, or please call in so that we can hear your statements and your thoughts. It doesn't appear as though there's anyone. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Oh, reports.
Okay.
Do we have reports?
Oh,
I vote motion.
yeah.
I don't have anything new to add.
Oh, okay.
Okay, well, I'd like to once
Second
again
stand.
thank staff for stellar work. You continue to amaze us, and we thank you for your service to all of the competing pressures you're under. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think you
See what that is?
should add that public comment item to our
It's an
agenda,
elevator.
just as a normal,
Sensors lift.
and it should specifically say for items not on the agenda, limited to 3 minutes.
My wife and I were
You know,
waiting